What's up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be going through some Cornerstone rankings, players you want to build your dynasty teams around. We're going to go through the top 10 wide receivers, as well as the top 5 quarterbacks you want to center your dynasty team build around. Players that are young and productive, and that are showing no signs of slowing down in terms of fantasy success. We're going to start off with our wide receivers. The number one spot on this list is a bit tough to break down. You have two, maybe three major competitors right now, but the player I'm going to hand the number one spot to is Puka Nacua, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. He may not be the leading receiver in the NFL so far this season, but he's played one less game than Seahawks wide receiver Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who is currently leading the league, and he's also sharing the field with a future Hall of Famer wide receiver in Davante Adams. Despite all this, Puka Nacua is currently sitting at 1,592 receiving yards this season, and he's showing no signs of slowing down. I mean, he just put up 225 yards and 2 touchdowns against the formidable Seattle Seahawks defense in that Thursday night shootout, but apart from that, through his first 3 years in the NFL so far, he's averaged the most yards per game in NFL history with 96.9. Over those first 3 years, he has been historically fantastic in terms of production. On top of that, just this year in 2025, he is 4th in the NFL in targets and 1st in the NFL in yards per game. Now, there could be some murkiness in his fantasy outlook coming up. We don't know if Matthew Stafford's going to retire in the next couple years. If he does, the search for a new quarterback could provide some mixed results for Puka's fantasy value, but he's so good. It would take a pretty bad quarterback to tank his value at this point, so we'll keep looking at that for the future. But right now, and probably for the next couple seasons, I don't see Stafford retiring after 2025. Puka Nacua is the most elite dynasty asset among wide receivers as far as I'm concerned. On top of this, he's also leading the NFL in both PFF offensive grade and PFF receiving grade for the 2025 season. Looking at more of these PFF stats, he's leading the NFL in yards after the catch with 622. He's also among the top in yards per route run, a big efficiency stat that I really like to look at, 4.02 yards per route run there. And he also, according to PFF, is leading the NFL in contested catches. We saw last year he only played 11 games and put up 990 yards. That is unbelievable. So yes, narrowly, I'm going to give Puka Nacua the number one spot. Next up, we have Jaxon Smith-Njigba, wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks. This is a pretty obvious selection. The number 3 guy is right behind him, though. JSN has been the top wide receiver in football this year in terms of just flat-out production. In 15 games, he has over 1,600 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns so far this season. And when you look at the game log, he doesn't even have a single game so far this season with at least 10 receptions, all single-digit reception games for JSN this year. He also has only one game with less than 70 receiving yards, so his consistency has been undeniable. He's on the field for every game. I don't believe he's missed a game so far yet in his career, and he does the most with the least. Seattle is currently 30th in pass attempts per game. That means Jaxon Smith-Njigba is having a historic season at wide receiver with an offense that does not pass the ball that much, with Sam Darnold at quarterback. But we can see why this is the case pretty easily. He has the largest target share in the NFL with over 35% of the team's targets coming his way. When they pass the ball, there's a pretty good chance it ends up in the hands of Smith-Njigba. On top of this, with a long-term outlook, Seattle has more pressing needs than wide receiver this offseason. It's not likely that they're probably going to add a big name at the position. They already traded for Rashid Shaheed earlier this season at the deadline. He's been pretty good as a returner / wide receiver too, and I don't think he's going to eat too much into JSN's volume in the years to come. With Shaheed at that wide receiver 2 spot, JSN is firmly the wide receiver 1 in this offense, not that anyone's questioning that in the first place. But on top of this, he's also averaging 3.75 yards per route run, one of my favorite statistics again. JSN is easily a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL this year. He comes in at number 2. Number 3 is Ja'Marr Chase. No surprise, rounding out our top 3 wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. This dude's a definition of consistency, averaging around 88 receiving yards per game throughout his career so far. And unlike Puka, unlike Jaxon Smith-Njigba, he is also locked up contractually to the Bengals on a long-term contract extension that they got done this past offseason. So you don't have to worry about any kind of contract drama with Ja'Marr Chase. He's locked in with Joe Burrow, with T. Higgins for years to come. That is, unless Cincinnati has a fallout with Burrow this offseason. There's a lot of rumors of that going around. But unless Burrow somehow leaves Cincinnati, I don't think he's going to anyways. Ja'Marr Chase's value will be just fine with the quarterback he's built up so much chemistry with over the last several years. We all know what Ja'Marr Chase does. He racks up yards and he gets in the end zone, averaging double-digit touchdowns so far in his career. And looking at just this year, a stat that sticks out that kind of just represents who he is as a player. He's 2nd in yards after the catch, just behind Puka Nacua. He is so good at that as well. You know what you're getting with Ja'Marr Chase, an elite wide receiver locked into a high volume offense that's going to produce as long as Joe Burrow's under center. That's not even mentioning the fact that Chase has over 1,200 yards in a season where Joe Burrow has not played the majority of the games. He came back just recently, and Ja'Marr Chase was catching passes from backup quarterbacks. If you're looking for a stud wide receiver, you found it in Ja'Marr Chase. Moving on, we've got Malik Nabers, wide receiver for the New York Giants, a guy I was so high on coming into this year, but unfortunately his sophomore season ended prematurely with an ACL tear just 4 games into the year. However, he is still extremely young, and I have so much hope that he's going to recover and bounce back from this injury. Look for him in the Comeback Player of the Year race in 2026. In his rookie season, he was unbelievable. 170 targets, 109 receptions, over 1,200 receiving yards, and he had 7 touchdowns as well. And this season, with Russell Wilson under center, who has since been benched, he was on pace for over 1,000 receiving yards yet again. Malik Nabers will now return to an offense in which he is tied long-term to quarterback Jaxson Dart, who was a rookie this year out of Ole Miss, who's looked very promising thus far in his first campaign. With Nabers as well, you're getting a very young wide receiver. Heading into year 3, he will only be 23 years old, a guy you're going to have for years to come. Nabers has shown himself to be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL when he's on the field. I think he's going to recover pretty well from this ACL injury. I had super high hopes for him in 2025, and I'm extending that into 2026. At number 5, we have Amon-Ra St. of the Detroit Lions, one of my favorite players in all of football. We talked about consistency with Ja'Marr Chase. We can double down on that with St. Brown, easily one of the most consistent wide receivers in the sport. He hasn't had a single healthy game with under 40 receiving yards since week 8 of last season, 2024. That is unbelievable to think about. Also, this dude is constantly used in the red zone. 33 touchdowns over his last 48 games, and he's consistently been one of the most targeted wide receivers in that area, the red zone, over the last several years. He's also tied financially to this elite balanced offense long term, and Dan Campbell and this Detroit coaching staff schemes him open constantly. He's one of the best wide receivers to have on your team week in and week out. Honestly, I think St. Brown is becoming an underrated fantasy asset. He is just so good every single year. You can bet on him to stay healthy, get touchdowns, get receptions, get yards. Speaking of players I really like watching, we have Drake London at number 6, wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. This hasn't been the ideal season for London. A mix of injuries and instability in quarterback play have left things certainly different than they were in 2024 when he broke out, but that doesn't change the fact that he's one of the most talented wide receivers in the entire NFL, just in terms of raw ability. He has 830 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns in just 10 games this year. It's kind of reminiscent of Puka Nacua's 2024 season when he dealt with that knee injury, but still put up 990 yards in 11 games. On top of that, London has easily had worse quarterback play than Nacua did back in 2024, so this has been an extremely impressive statistical season for Drake London. He's shown the ability to produce regardless of who is under center, and he's still only 24 years old, making him one of the best pure assets in all of Dynasty fantasy football. A stat that'll just exemplify how good he's been in limited action this year: half of his games in 2025, he's gone for over 100 receiving yards. That's awesome. At 7, we've got CeeDee Lamb, one of 2 Dallas Cowboys wide receivers that will appear on this list, kind of a spoiler for later. Similarly to Drake London, he's been amazing in somewhat limited action. He's only played 12 games so far this season, but that hasn't stopped him from making an impact as usual as one of the best wide receivers in football. With Dak Prescott back under center and playing as expected, just like he was before that injury, CeeDee Lamb has returned to form. I say returned to form, he almost put up 1,200 yards last season, but you know what I mean. This is his 5th straight 1,000-yard season. He's going to do it every single year, regardless if he misses games or not, unless he misses like half the season or something like that. And Dak Prescott, being one of the best quarterbacks in football, is certainly going to help him do that every single season. 2.55 yards per route run this year. He's been one of the most efficient wide receivers in the entire league. However, there is a situation currently unfolding. George Pickens, his partner in crime with the wide receiver position, is scheduled to be a free agent this offseason. If the Cowboys end up re-signing George Pickens, I wouldn't expect 170 plus target seasons from CeeDee Lamb going forward on a consistent basis. However, things will continue to open up for him offensively because the defense can't just focus on Lamb, they have to focus on both Lamb and Pickens, so I wouldn't be worried about his production. Regardless if George Pickens is back next year with Dallas, CeeDee Lamb is going to continue to be great. We've got Justin Jefferson, wide receiver for the Vikings at the 8th spot here, for a lot of things out of his control. This dude is one of the best wide receivers in football. He's been easily one of the most productive in NFL history over his first 6 years in the NFL. However, this is currently his worst statistical season to date. He may not even hit 1,000 yards this year, so you're asking, why is he so high on this list? It's because he has over 8,000 career receiving yards through 6 seasons. We're talking about a guy who started his career going for 1,400 yards, 1,600 yards, and then 1,800 yards in the first 3 years of his career. And this is despite having shaky quarterback situations for the majority of his career in Minnesota. And that's unfortunately continued into this year with J.J. McCarthy starting his first year in the NFL and his second year out of Michigan. Now, J.J. McCarthy hasn't been the worst quarterback in football, but he's certainly had his struggles in his first year of starting, as was expected. But that has unfortunately affected Jefferson statistically, as he is currently sitting at 917 receiving yards. Now, I think there's a chance McCarthy puts it all together in the coming years and Jefferson will return to form statistically. And trust me, I want to put him higher on this list, but until we see that really happen on a game-to-game basis for McCarthy, I can't put him higher than 8. But I can't emphasize enough how good Jefferson is. 90.8 receiving yards per game over his first 6 seasons, including a down year this year. That's second in NFL history behind Puka Nacua, who we mentioned earlier. And he's still only 26 years old, so an elite asset. Next up, we have our 9th wide receiver out of 10. That's Nico Collins, wide receiver for the Houston Texans. He's hit 1,000 plus receiving yards for the 3rd straight season after working his way up the depth chart in Houston early in his career. He's an elite and physical deep threat, averaging 15.6 yards per reception this season. He also has 17 contested catches this year according to PFF, a very high number. He is great at that. He's also locked up contractually long-term to Houston with CJ Stroud at quarterback, and he is easily the wide receiver one in that offense, despite some exciting rookies being below him on the depth chart. Nico Collins, if he stays healthy every single year, is just going to be a productive top 10 wide receiver. There's not much to say about him. He's such a good dynasty asset, and if you're rostering him, congratulations, you have a great wide receiver. Then for our 10th final player on this list of wide receivers to build your dynasty team around, we have George Pickens, another wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. Pickens was traded to Dallas this offseason from Pittsburgh after having some good years there, but never quite breaking out until the elite wide receiver he is now with the Cowboys. He is 3rd in receiving yards this season with 1,342 yards. He also has 9 touchdowns. He and Dak Prescott have made a great duo, and really it's a trio with CeeDee Lamb, the other receiver there. But Pickens is so good at making spectacular catches. He's a great deep threat. The only snag of this is that he is a free agent after this season. The big question is he going to continue to be in this high volume elite Dallas offense, or is he going to go to a place where he thinks he's going to be the clear-cut wide receiver one? I certainly hope he stays in Dallas. I think that's the right decision for him. I mean, he has a career high 129 targets so far this season. I think he should be the number one priority for Dallas this offseason to re-sign. On top of that, he's still only 24 years old. That's how good of an asset he is. We're going to move into our top 5 dynasty cornerstone quarterbacks. Quarterbacks you want to build your dynasty fantasy football team around. But I'm also going to quickly run through my honorable mentions, my quarterback 6 through 10. Starting with my number 6 quarterback, Joe Burrow. Number 7 is Trevor Lawrence. Number 8 is Caleb Williams. Justin Herbert's at number 9. And then we have Jaden Daniels at number 10. Going back to our top 5 quarterbacks to build around, we have Josh Allen at number 1. Not a big surprise. He is basically just a perennial top 2 fantasy football quarterback. Passing numbers are always pretty good, but the rushing attack is really when he cashes in those fantasy points. This is a guy that gets so many design runs and scrambles per season. He is so good at that. He has now, for the 3rd straight year, logged over 100 carries, over 500 rushing yards, and over 12 rushing touchdowns. Those are just insane fantasy point boosters. Josh Allen is one of the league's best quarterbacks, and he is basically a cheat code in fantasy football. He's always going to get that rushing work, always going to get, around the goal line especially, designed carries, and his passing stats are always good enough to back him up. He's elite. Drake Maye is our number 2 quarterback. He's been probably the breakout star of the year. You could debate having him number 1 on this list. I certainly did. He's going to exceed 4,000 passing yards this year, but make no mistake, he is also capable of making noise on the ground as a rusher. He almost has 400 rushing yards so far this season. He is really capable of using those legs. He has 29 total offensive touchdowns. He has been nothing short of electric. Was recently just named to the Pro Bowl, so congratulations to him. He is firmly in the MVP race with Matthew Stafford. Furthermore, on a long-term basis, I think the weapons around him are going to continue to improve. They already fortified the offensive line this offseason, but I think they're going to bring in maybe another wide receiver or 2 this offseason, maybe through the draft, maybe through free agency, to give him even more weapons to throw to. to. Obviously, Stephon Diggs has been great, but he's not going to be around forever. You do have some interesting young guys at the wide receiver position on this roster, like Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams, Kayshon Boutte, Efton Chisholm even. Regardless, the situation is great in New England for Drake Maye, and that includes the head coach, a match made in heaven with Maye and Mike Vrabel, who was probably one of my favorite hires of this past cycle. I don't think he ever should have been fired in Tennessee, and we're seeing exactly why, as the Patriots are now in the driver's seat to potentially get the number 1 seed in the AFC. My number 3 quarterback is Lamar Jackson, one of my favorite players in football. I know I've said that a lot in this video, but I really do think Lamar Jackson is a future Hall of Famer. He has struggled this season with injuries, and the passing stats haven't been exactly where you want them to be, but he's still an elite quarterback, especially for fantasy. He's missed several games this year, but despite that, just look back one season to 2024. Over 4,000 passing yards, 41 passing touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, and over 900 rushing yards. I think he should have won MVP last year. That's up for debate. It's already done and over. Josh Allen won it. Congratulations. But Lamar Jackson last year put up one of the best single-season stat lines we're ever going to see from a quarterback. This season, things didn't break the right way. I think the offensive line regressed. Also, his weapons in the passing game aren't the most elite, but I think those issues are going to be addressed this offseason, hopefully, as Baltimore continues to build for a future postseason run. I know this wasn't the season they expected or hoped for, so they're going to want to reload. But Lamar Jackson at his peak is just the best quarterback in football, the best quarterback in fantasy football. He's not even 30 years old yet, so he's my number 3 quarterback to build your dynasty team around. We have Patrick Mahomes at 4, which may be a surprise to some people. But Mahomes is clearly one of the league's best quarterbacks every single year, always finding a way to win. He's just one of those guys. And despite him tearing his ACL late in the season, which could make him miss the start of the 2026 NFL season, I'm still very high on him in Dynasty. He is 30 years old, but despite that, he's never been better as a rusher than he was in 2025. The rushing attack was not good for the Chiefs this season, so they had to lean on Mahomes getting a lot of scramble yards. He set a career high mark in both rushing yards and touchdowns, 422 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground before that ACL tear. He was on a roll. The one thing holding back, in my opinion, is how inconsistent his weapons are. I think Travis Kelce retires after the season, and the drafts from guys like Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy just have not been acceptable. Not saying those guys can't be good, but they need to get the drops under control. Mahomes is absolutely fantastic, and that translates to dynasty fantasy production as well. He's a great guy to have in your roster. My 5th quarterback is Jalen Hurts, the final player on this list, quarterback for the Eagles. This guy's an automatic top 10 quarterback finisher for the past 5 years, including a couple seasons inside the top 3. He has solid passing stats, doesn't have a ton of interceptions, which is nice, but he really makes his money as a rusher. The rushing stats are certainly down from 2024, where they were insane, especially the touchdowns, but still has 416 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. He's always going to get those tush-push carries on the goal line. That's something to look forward to. And he also has great weapons in A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley around him. However, a change of offensive coordinator this offseason could be needed if this offense wants to get back on track. Losing Kellen Moore, who went to be the head coach of the Saints, certainly hurt this offense, but Jalen Hurts at his peak is an elite dynasty option for fantasy football. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the Dynasty Trading Room YouTube channel for more content like this every single week. That's all I got for you guys. I'm Joe, and this is Dynasty Trading Room.